Hey, well, today I am angry at the thugs and animals. And you may wonder if I'm talking about the protesters or the police. And I will be honest with you, I'm speaking about both. First, let's start off with Mike O'Meara, who is the president of the New York Association of Police Unions, complaining about the police being treated as thugs and animals.
Stop treating us like animals and thugs, and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say.
The complaints that Mike just voiced are the complaints that both sides could make. The protesters are asking for exactly the same. Stop treating us as thugs and animals and listen to our legitimate concerns. It doesn't help that there are thugs and animals on both sides. I'm talking about protesters who are not protesters, but are indeed looters and assaulters and committers of mayhem. I'm talking about thugs and animals on the police side who choke to death people, black, white, Asian, who shoot to death people of all colors. There are thugs and animals on both sides, and my problem is that neither side is willing to police itself. The protesters at least are attempting to stop the thugs and animals in their ranks by realizing that as these protests turn violent, they become less effective and more of the country turns against their efforts. The police, when they discover thugs and animals in their midst, cover up for them. This is the one complaint against the police that they seem to have no response for. They always respond by saying there are a few bad apples in the barrel and we shouldn't judge the entire barrel by these few bad apples. That is nonsense. The police are upholders of the law. If they see a fellow policeman break the law, they should stop him and or arrest him. Instead, they do not. They protect themselves and each other. They even have a gang flag now, which is called the Thin Blue Line flag. If that's not a desecration of the American flag, I don't know what is. Are we all allowed to take a version of the American flag and convert it to our own club flag? I don't think so. I'm not a fan of this at all. The police are our servants. And I would point out one more thing. If you listen to all the threats of police resigning around the country, they're not actually resigning. They are just resigning from the units that they were deployed to. They're still employed and they're still collecting salaries. And after only 20 years of working in the public sector, they will get a pension for life. Think about that. You start a job in your early 20s, in your early 40s you retire, and you collect a pension and medical pay for 2 to 3 times as long as you worked. How is that possibly going to be sustainable? You know, all these activists who are gung-ho about defunding the police department, you wonder how they're going to feel when they find out that even after firing every policeman, there still is an enormous budget for all the old ex-policemen who are on pensions. This is an enormous problem and no one is talking about it. Let's talk about another comment that Mike made, belittling the fears that black parents have for their black children.
In the black community, mothers are worried about their children getting home from school without being killed by a cop. What world are we living in? That doesn't happen. It does not happen.
So there's Mike saying that this threat is not real. It does not happen. It does not happen. Except we all know that it does happen. My kids are white. I worry about their interactions with the police. What if my son makes a joke at an officer's expense or doesn't obey him fast enough? And if I was the parent of a black child, I would be more concerned. I think there is an assumption on the police department's side that a black person is more likely to be troublesome and they are more likely to be killed, except they aren't. Unarmed white people were killed more frequently than unarmed black people. So let's put aside the fact that this is a race matter. It isn't. The only colors that are involved are the color blue and the color that the rest of us are. The police need to be reined in. They keep complaining about the fact that we're judging them based on the actions of a few, but they themselves are police, and they are not enforcing police rules and laws on their fellow officers. What about the 3 officers who stood by while Chauvin choked George Floyd to death? What about the police who shoved that elderly protester in Buffalo and all acted as a unit? One officer tried to lean down to help the gentleman. He was pushed along. The other police would not allow him to help. They are a gang. The police look out for themselves. I have no doubt that police lie in court. Wouldn't you, if you were convinced that you'd arrested the right guy, but you couldn't find enough evidence? You'd figure, just like a parent with a child, well, I may not have proof that he did it this time, but I know he's a bad guy. And they do that kind of profiling. They don't deny it. The fault is not entirely on the police side. The protesters have a legitimate concern. The concern is the way the police treat civilians. But the protests have been hijacked, and now it's become a race issue. Black lives matter, all lives matter. You can't even say all lives matter. People who say Black Lives Matter say, no, we're not saying only Black Lives Matter. Well, then why do you have the word black in it? If we had a phrase that said white lives matter, I would imagine the black people would be infuriated, and the Asian people, and they should be. You cannot use a color in a description and then claim not to be racist, period. If you're a black person and you have hostile feelings towards white people, you're a racist. If you're a white person and you have hostile feelings towards a black person, you're a racist. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts or gray area about it. Racism is judging someone based on the color of their skin, period. It doesn't have anything to do with historical context or anything else. It's just a question of, do you judge someone because they're white or black or Asian? If you judge them on that standard, you're a racist. Let's talk about one more point, going back to the police and they're not being thugs and animals. This is the statement from Mike regarding New York, which he claims is nothing like Minneapolis.
This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it.
I'll point out that although he claims that New York does not suffer from the same problems as Minneapolis, New York in 2018 paid $230 million to settle 6,400 lawsuits just against the New York Police Department. There are thugs and animals on both sides of this issue. The police need to police their own. The protesters need to police their own. If the police cannot protest their own, then maybe they should be disbanded and something new should rise in its place. If the protesters cannot police their own, then their protests will fail. They will go down as vandals and looters, and the public will have no sympathy for them. Let's not form judgments on either side based upon verbal name-calling. There are bad actors on both sides. The police, if they want to earn our respect, need to police themselves. To date, they don't. Please, let's wake up.